Well, look, let's move on, because while we're on the topic of how the media has covered the conflict so far, it is important to point out specific instances of wrongdoing by some journalists. Now, we're lucky, obviously, to have Sophie Ellsworth with us here on the desk, because she has brought us information of the disgraced ABC journalist Tom Joyner, who used a group chat to try and convince hundreds of journalists reporting on the war that allegations of beheaded babies were, to use his words, not mine, BS. Now, Sophie's exclusive triggered widespread condemnation of Joyner and the ABC for failing to properly reprimand the reporter. The issue even followed ABC Managing Director David Anderson into Senate estimates, where he promised the Australian people that everyone was deeply apologetic and regretful.
Looking at a story that was quite awful to say out loud, that involved 40 babies, and we contacted the IDF about that, and they were unable to verify that that had happened. His language was unfortunate. He knows that he's distressed people by using that language. As I said, he's quite remorseful that that happened.
Now, that may be the case, but it appears to be that Joyner and the ABC are more regretful that they got caught. The journo hasn't been sacked, just rotated out of the region, and the ABC has continued to push pro-Hamas line over and over again. And this issue is not just an Australian one. I know we just gave the New York Times a bit of credit for owning up to a major mistake, but check out this story. The Times has just rehired a freelance journalist, Soliman Hijjy, even though he posted this image with the words, "How great you are, Hitler." When that's the maniac giving your newsroom on-the-ground intel, it's no wonder the Times got the hospital bombing story so wrong. And the extraordinary thing about this story is actually the statement the Times released to justify its decision to bring this evil maniac back into its fold. We reviewed the problematic social media posts by Mr. Hyer when they first came to light in 2022 and took a variety of actions to ensure he understood our concerns and could adhere to our standards if he wished to do freelance work for us in the future. Mr. Hyer followed those steps and has maintained high journalistic standards. He has delivered important and impartial work at great personal risk in Gaza during this conflict. Now, there are so many things wrong with that statement. Shouldn't praising Hitler be a zero-tolerance act? It is hard to see how he could be impartial about this conflict in any capacity. It is dangerous and appalling judgment by the Times. And remember this case the next time a progressive journalist talks about extremism. At the Times, extremism is welcome in its own newsroom. Now, Christie, I want to go to you first about this New York Times incident, because you've got here, it's an activist journalist, it's quite clear, but that's not the problem. The problem, we'll set that aside, that this journalist hasn't been impartial in the coverage quite clearly. This journalist, this freelancer, has posted in favour of Hitler, and the New York Times thinks that's appropriate to bring them back into the fold. What are your thoughts?
This is the worst public relations clean-up I think I've heard of ever. Absolutely ever. In any other workplace in the world, and I say the world deliberately, making a statement such as that would be instant dismissal. I note that the publication has gone on to try and justify their actions and talk about what a good reporter is and how he's put himself in on the line in dangerous situations. That conversation's not needed. The conversation needs to actually just stop with what he's done in that one sentence that he has put a voice to, and that should be the end of it.
Yeah, it should be a black and white case, right, Sophie? I'm really keen to get your thoughts quickly on this pro-Hitler New York Times situation, but also I'm keen to hear your thoughts on this Tom Joyner story and how it's progressed since you broke the news.
Yeah, I'll pick up on the Tom Joyner thing because I've been covering it right along, Jack. But David Anderson on Tuesday at Estimates basically condemned what he said in this WhatsApp group about the babies being beheaded story as BS, as you said. But the ABC seemed to find it really hard to take action when their journalists do something appalling. Now, let's just be clear to our viewers that Tom Joyner is under investigation. He has been rotated out of Israel and he will return to his base of Istanbul. Now, he is the Middle East correspondent for the ABC who said those disgraceful things with arrogance, I would say, to a group of 600-odd journalists from around the world. He is out of the Middle East when they're in the middle of a war. That is remarkable that their Middle East correspondent cannot be reporting on it at this time. I think they need to reassess where his job is at. That is a real worry that he's the representative, one of, for our national taxpayer-funded broadcaster, Jack.
Oh, it's extraordinary. And something else that we obviously haven't mentioned, but in relation to this, is the Heston Russell case, the defamation case. One of the judgments was that the ABC is too defensive. Do you think this is one of these cases where they get on the back foot, their immediate inclination is to defend the journalist rather than to look at it objectively and take action?
Well, Jack, I think because they have what appears to be an endless pot of cash, they can fight these things. So when they're in the wrong, they don't like to admit it, they can go to court. They can spend millions. They're not a commercial entity. So that's what they do, and I think they find it very hard to apologise or admit when they make mistakes.
Yeah, if it was a commercial outlet, they'd be sacked. But you're right, there's a protection racket for them.